In the shadow of Lordaeron's fall, where the land itself seemed to weep with the weight of its dead, a new order rose from the ashes of despair. The Scarlet Crusade, once a beacon of hope, a defiant light against the creeping darkness of the Scourge. But as the years passed, that light grew harsh, blinding, and cruel. What began as a noble mission to protect the living became a fanatical crusade, its zealots willing to burn the world to save it. This is the story of how the Scarlet Crusade was born, how it rose to power, and how it was doomed from the start. The Third War left Lordaeron in ruins. The Scourge, led by the traitor prince Arthas Menethil, swept across the land like a plague, leaving nothing but death and despair in its wake. The once proud knights of the Silver Hand, defenders of the light, were shattered. Their leader, Uther the Lightbringer, was dead, and their ranks were scattered. But from the ashes of this devastation, a new force emerged, a desperate, determined group of survivors who refused to let their homeland fall to the undead. They called themselves the Scarlet Crusade. At first, their mission was clear: to cleanse Lordaeron of the Scourge and restore the kingdom to its former glory. They rallied in Hearthglen, a bastion of hope amidst the chaos, and began to rebuild. But desperation breeds extremism, and the Crusade's leaders soon grew ruthless in their pursuit of victory. They saw enemies everywhere, not just in the undead, but in anyone who might harbor the taint of the plague. Their once noble cause began to twist, their methods growing darker, their hearts hardening with every battle. At the heart of the Scarlet Crusade's early days was a man whose name would become legend: Alexandros Mograine. Known as the Ashbringer, Mograine was a paladin of unparalleled skill and devotion. His weapon, a blade forged from a purified dark crystal, burned with the light's fury, turning undead to ash with a single strike. The Ashbringer became a symbol of hope, a beacon for the Crusade's soldiers as they fought to reclaim their homeland. But even Mograine could not escape the corruption that seeped into the Crusade's ranks. His own son, Renaud, driven by jealousy and ambition, betrayed him. In a moment of treachery that would haunt the Crusade forever, Renaud led his father into a trap where the undead overwhelmed him. With the Ashbringer in hand, Renaud struck the final blow, ending his father's life and shattering the Crusade's unity. The Ashbringer, once a weapon of hope, became a symbol of betrayal. And as the Crusade's leaders turned on one another, their noble mission began to unravel, setting the stage for their descent into fanaticism and ruin. Alexandros Mograine, the Ashbringer, was a hero, a man whose name inspired hope and whose blade struck fear into the hearts of the undead. But even heroes have their weaknesses, and Mograine's was his trust in his own son. Renaud, consumed by jealousy and ambition, had fallen under Balnazzar's sway. In a moment of treachery that would echo through history, Renaud led his father and High Inquisitor Fairbanks into the ruins of Stratholme, where the Scourge lay in wait. Though Mograine fought valiantly, cutting down scores of undead, he was overwhelmed. In his final moments, he turned to his son, only to see the Ashbringer raised against him. Renaud plunged the blade into his father's back, ending the life of the man who had once been the Crusade's greatest champion. Fairbanks, though gravely wounded, survived the ambush and returned to the Scarlet Monastery to expose Renaud's betrayal. But Balnazzar, still masquerading as Dathrohan, silenced him, declaring Fairbanks tainted by the undead and ordering his execution. The truth of Mograine's death was buried, and the Crusade's leadership fractured. Some, like Renaud, embraced the growing extremism. Others, horrified by what the Crusade had become, began to question their allegiance. From the ashes of the Scarlet Crusade's betrayal, a new order emerged, one that sought to uphold the ideals the Crusade had abandoned. The Argent Dawn, founded by those who could no longer stomach the Crusade's fanaticism, stood as a beacon of hope in a land consumed by darkness. Led by figures like High Lord Tyrion Fordring and the redeemed paladin Darien Mograine, the Argent Dawn took a different approach to the fight against the Scourge. Where the Crusade saw only enemies, the Dawn sought allies. Where the Crusade burned villages to root out the plague, The Dawn worked to heal and protect the living. They understood that the true battle was not just against the undead, but against the despair and hatred that the Scourge spread. The Argent Dawn became a sanctuary for those who still believed in the light's mercy, a stark contrast to the Scarlet Crusade's growing extremism. But even as the Dawn fought to reclaim Lordaeron, the Crusade's shadow loomed large, a reminder of how easily noble intentions could be twisted into something darker. As the Scarlet Crusade's leaders grew more paranoid, their methods grew more brutal. What began as a mission to cleanse Lordaeron of the undead became a campaign of terror against anyone they deemed a threat. Villages suspected of harboring the plague were burned to the ground, their inhabitants slaughtered without mercy. The Crusade's soldiers, once defenders of the light, became executioners, their blades stained with the blood of the innocent. Their intolerance knew no bounds. Non-humans, dwarves, high elves, even their former allies, were seen as unclean, potential carriers of the undead plague. The Crusade's ranks became an echo chamber of fanaticism, where dissent was met with swift and brutal punishment. Even their own members were not safe. Those who questioned the Crusade's methods were branded heretics, their fates sealed by the very order they had once sworn to serve. The Crusade's atrocities only deepened the divide between them and the Argent Dawn. While the Dawn sought to heal and protect, the Crusade sought only to destroy. Their once noble mission had become a twisted crusade, their zealotry blinding them to the suffering they caused. In their desperation to defeat the Scourge, the Scarlet Crusade sought to create a weapon that could rival the Ashbringer. They called it Light's Wrath, a staff imbued with the power of the light, forged from a dark jewel purified by their most skilled priests. But the creation of such a weapon was no simple task. The ritual to purify the jewel and bind it to the staff was delicate, requiring the combined efforts of 10 of the Crusade's most devout priests. For weeks, they worked in secret, their faith unwavering. But Balnazzar, ever the puppeteer, feared that such a weapon could expose his deception and shatter his hold over the Crusade. He sabotaged the ritual, unleashing a storm of holy energy that killed the priests and left the staff unstable. Though the staff was completed, its power was uncontrollable. Those who wielded it were consumed by its energy, their bodies reduced to ash. In one battle near Tyr's Hand, a crusader used Light's Wrath to annihilate a Scourge army, but the blast also killed him and dozens of his comrades. The staff became a symbol of the Crusade's recklessness, a weapon as dangerous to its wielder as it was to its enemies. Eventually, the staff was lost, its fate a mystery, but its creation served as a grim reminder of the Crusade's descent into madness, a desperate attempt to reclaim their former glory, even as they spiraled further into darkness. As the Crusade's hold on Lordaeron weakened, their leaders turned their gaze northward, to Northrend, the frozen heart of the Scourge's power. Under the leadership of High General Brigitte Bendis, the Crusade transformed into the Scarlet Onslaught, a new force dedicated to striking at the Lich King himself. Bendis claimed to have received visions from the light, urging her to lead her most faithful followers to Northrend. She called this mission the Crimson Dawn, a revival of the Crusade's holy purpose. But the truth was far darker. Balnazzar, still pulling the strings, had manipulated Bendis into believing the visions were real. The Onslaught's campaign was not a holy mission, but a suicide run, a final, desperate gamble to reclaim the Crusade's lost glory. The Onslaught established a foothold in Northrend, building New Hearthglen as their base of operations. But their efforts were doomed from the start. The Scourge, led by the Death Knights of Acheris, launched a devastating assault on the Onslaught's forces. Bendis, realizing too late that she had been deceived, fled to Northrend, leaving her soldiers to their fate. The Scarlet Onslaught's campaign ended in failure, their ranks decimated, and their leaders dead or scattered. But even in defeat, the Crusade's fanaticism endured. Their remnants, now calling themselves the Scarlet Brotherhood, continued to fight, their hatred for the undead undiminished. Yet their cause had become a hollow echo of what it once was, a crusade without purpose, driven by rage and despair. The Scarlet Enclave, once a bastion of hope in the eastern Plaguelands, became the stage for the Crusade's final stand. Nestled in the shadow of Tyr's hand, the Enclave was a symbol of the Crusade's defiance, a last refuge for those who still believed in their cause. But even this sanctuary could not withstand the relentless tide of the Scourge. When the Death Knights of Acheris descended upon the Enclave, they brought with them an army of undead, unlike anything the Crusade had faced before. The battle was swift and brutal. Havenshire, a quiet village under the Crusade's protection, was the first to fall. Its people, once safe behind the Crusade's walls, were slaughtered or raised as undead, their homes reduced to smoldering ruins. New Avalon, the Enclave's heart, was next. The Death Knights, led by the Lich King's most loyal servants, tore through the Crusade's defenses with ruthless efficiency. High General Brigitte Abendis, realizing the futility of their resistance, abandoned her soldiers, fleeing to Northrend with the remnants of her forces. The Enclave fell, its streets littered with the bodies of Crusaders and civilians alike. The fall of the Scarlet Enclave marked the end of the Crusade's dominance in Lordaeron. Their strongholds were lost, their leaders dead or scattered, and their once mighty army reduced to a shadow of its former self. But even in defeat, the Crusade's fanaticism endured, a flame that refused to be extinguished. From the ashes of the Scarlet Enclave rose the Scarlet Brotherhood, a new name for an old cause. The Brotherhood was made up of the Crusade's most fanatical remnants, those who refused to abandon their war against the undead. They regrouped in the Scarlet Monastery, their last remaining stronghold, and continued their fight against the Forsaken and the Scourge. But the Brotherhood was a pale imitation of the Crusade at its height. Their numbers were few, their resources scarce, and their leadership fractured. They clung to their hatred of the undead, but their methods grew even more extreme. They saw enemies everywhere, not just in the Forsaken, but in the Alliance as well, whom they viewed as traitors for failing to support their cause. The Brotherhood's war was a desperate one, fought not for victory, but for survival. They launched raids on Forsaken settlements, ambushed Alliance patrols, and waged a guerrilla campaign against the Scourge. But their efforts were futile. The world had moved on, and the Brotherhood's fanaticism had left them isolated, their cause all but forgotten. Yet, even in their darkest hour, the Brotherhood refused to surrender. They became a symbol of stubborn defiance, a reminder of how far the Crusade had fallen, and how far they were willing to go to cling to their twisted ideals. The story of the Scarlet Crusade is one of tragedy, a tale of noble intentions twisted by fear, hatred, and corruption. What began as a desperate fight to save Lordaeron became a crusade of fanaticism and brutality, its leaders consumed by their own paranoia and ambition. The Crusade's legacy is a complicated one. They were defenders of the light, but also perpetrators of unspeakable atrocities. They fought against the Scourge, but also against their own people, their own allies, and even themselves. In the end, their greatest enemy was not the undead, but their own inability to see the darkness within. The Scarlet Crusade serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of how easily hope can turn to despair and how quickly a noble cause can be corrupted. Their story is etched into the history of Azeroth, a testament to the dangers of fanaticism and the cost of blind devotion. And though the Crusade is gone, their shadow lingers. In the Scarlet Brotherhood, in the ruins of their strongholds, and in the memories of those who survived their wrath, the Crusade's legacy endures, a haunting reminder of what happens when the light is wielded, not as a beacon of hope, but as a weapon of destruction.